Let's be clear. Perfectionism is not having high standards. Perfectionism is not wanting to draw accurately. Perfectionism is not having a realism or a photorealism drawing style or technique. Perfectionism is not about what we draw or even how we draw it. It's about how we're thinking. Perfectionism takes place in our mind, not on our paper. It's not just that we'd like our drawing to look right, but we need it to look right. And I think a helpful way of working out at what point does my desire to draw well start to slide into perfectionism, I think it's when our thinking shifts from trying to draw well and working hard at drawing our lines accurately, and the fear of mistakes starts to become the overriding thought, the stronger thought, the thing that starts to guide what we draw and how we draw it. Our focus isn't on the positive, it's on the negative. And as the drawing progresses, this fear of making a mistake can develop into a more general, oh no, I'm afraid of messing up my drawing now. It's working out, so I'm going to mess up one of these lines. I have to be so careful, I don't want to ruin it now. So rather than creating something, we become more focused on not ruining something that we've created. And one of the biggest problems with the perfectionistic way of thinking is that over time it can easily become stronger and stronger. Our standards get higher and higher. Our feeling that we've wrecked our drawing happens more and more easily. And it can go beyond inhibiting our development of a comfortable and easy drawing style and actually start to paralyze us with fear. And at worst, we can get to the point that we're actually afraid to start a drawing. We're afraid to put a line on paper because the feeling that we're going to get it wrong, that we're going to mess it up, is right there before we've even started. And slipping into this mindset seems to be something that creative people do very easily. So if any of those descriptions of what a perfectionistic way of thinking might be sounds familiar to you, and if sometimes you feel more pressure than excitement when you're drawing, then possibly one or both of these 2 points might be a helpful thing for you to try. My first tip is if you draw with pencil. Now, graphite is a wonderful medium for drawing. It's capable of producing so many varied, beautiful and interesting and great marks on paper. But it has one great disadvantage if we're perfectionistic in our thinking, and that's we can erase it. And that's why my first tip is, if we're drawing in pencil, stop. And the perfectionism inside goes, no, you can't do that. We have to be able to erase our mistakes. That's why pencil's so great. And that's why it can be such an unhelpful thing if we're trying to deal with this perfectionism. Most drawings are made up of line upon line upon line. It's a development from a few early marks on the paper to increasing complexity and development. And when we look at the drawing at the end, we see it as a whole. We don't see it at any stage of the journey. We can't really judge any line until all the lines are together. Perfectionism makes us have this incredible focus on every one line and that every one line has to be right, which makes it very difficult to draw a nice, free, loose, expressive, or even straight line. We're more focused on where we don't want the line to go than where it needs to be put. And that conflict and struggle happens with the first line, the second line, the third line, and so on. Instead of learning as we draw, we can feel increasingly as if we're losing our confidence in drawing the more we draw. Perfectionism is a very insidious mindset. It's really worth making an effort to step out of it and to develop different ways of thinking. And if I draw with pencil, and if I've noticed an increasing dependence on the eraser, if more and more lines have to be erased because they're not quite right, then the easiest way to step off this merry-go-round is to stop using pencil, to stop using a medium which can be erased. Because this constant emphasis in our head of every line has to be perfect, I have to check that it's perfect, I have to erase it and draw it and redraw it until it's perfect, it really stops us from developing a nice, natural, expressive drawing style. And because we're focusing on each line more as an individual line than as a part of a whole, we can end up with a fairly dead wooden drawing style, instead of combining a whole lot of expressive lines together into an even more expressive result at the end. The other problem with erasing every line that's not perfect is that it stops us developing a good, healthy, realistic and practical attitude to lines that are in the wrong place, because no one is perfect and no artist is going to put every line exactly where they want it first go. My personal approach is, if I put a line that's not quite right, I draw, in most cases, a line over the top of it that is in the right place, which is angled properly, which curves better. And what I found is that when I look at my drawing at the end and others look at my drawing, our brains want to see the correct line. They want to see the line that it expects. So it favours the line in the right place. If I've only drawn one line and it's not right, then the brain's left thinking, that's not quite where I expect it to be. So most wrong lines can be certainly improved greatly by drawing the correct line over the top of it. The other thing is that I've learned that a mistake never looks as bad as when I've just made it. And with all the other lines added at the end, it probably won't be noticeable even to me, let alone to someone else, particularly because I have also added the correct line. And certainly mistakes that we make earliest in a drawing, which are always the hardest lines to draw, will look worse, because there are so few other lines around that mistake line to distract the eye and to create a fuller picture, a fuller context of all our line work. So if every line that's not quite right is able to be erased, I never learned these really valuable and I think important lessons in dealing with lines in the wrong place, in accepting and embracing all of or most of the lines that I put on paper when I create a drawing. And I'm freed up from the time-consuming erasing, redrawing, remeasuring, re-evaluating, erasing again, redrawing. And if we're thinking of creating new ways of thinking when we draw, by drawing lines which can't be erased, I can't engage with that direction, that roundabout of thinking. I have to just keep pushing on, because there now is no option of redoing. So this is a very strong way to create new ways of thinking. And of course, my suggestion is, if we've stopped drawing with pencil, then we start drawing with ink. It's a little bit of defiance to the perfectionistic thinking. I will embrace every line I draw with this pen and I will make it somehow part of my finished drawing. So that's the first tip. If you draw with pencil, stop drawing with pencil, at least for a while, or at least sometimes. And hopefully that will help your thinking when you draw get into a more constructive, enjoyable, relaxed place. But what if I've already switched from drawing in pencil to drawing in pen? Firstly, let me ask you, are you still drawing a pencil under drawing, which I did with these pen drawings? If the answer is yes, then can I say stop using pencil at all in your ink drawings and draw them directly in ink? Because those pencil guidelines become a place where our perfectionistic thinking can suddenly put its attention. So if I'm already drawing in ink and I'm not using pencil under drawings, what can I do to discourage perfectionistic thinking? And it's this. Do lots of very quick, timed pen drawings directly in pen. By quick, I mean 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the maximum, because the time has to be so short that my focus, my main focus at least, will always be on the time, that the time is my pressure, because that means the pressure won't be coming from a perfectionistic way of thinking about every line. If a line is not quite right, well, I can quickly add a more correct line over the top of it, but I have to move on. We just don't give our perfectionistic thinking time to operate, time to make us jump through all the hoops, because there is no time if we're sticking to our countdown clock. But we also take much of the reason for the perfectionism, much of the justification away with these really quick drawings. Because of the fear that if we don't make all these corrections, that the mistakes will ruin our drawing. But with these quick drawings, we can think of them just as exercises, not as real artworks. They're not something where it really matters how it looks at the end. It's a learning experience for me. Nothing I'm going to post on Instagram. I'm doing it so quickly, in fact, that I know it won't be perfect. I know there will be lines in the wrong place. The aim is just to get as much of the drawing done in the 10 minutes. So I create a healthier, more productive way of thinking in my mind by setting up a technique and conditions that simply doesn't allow the perfectionistic thinking to operate. And hopefully, as I get to enjoy drawing this way, and hopefully be impressed by some of the things I draw, I might even develop a good different technique suited to very short time frame drawing. And the plan, the hope, is that something of this new, freer way of thinking when I draw can get taken back into when I'm doing these larger, slower, more considered artworks. That I've made a shift in the way my brain talks to me that helps me to strike a better balance with how I'm processing and planning what I'm drawing. Of course, there's no problem with drawing with pencil or pen or charcoal or any other media that can make a mark on a surface. There are so many amazing options for artists today, and it's great to explore as many as we're able to. But these two suggestions as possible ways ahead are for when we can see that we've got into this way of thinking which is not giving us greater freedom in the development of our drawing style and technique, but actually starts to feel like a cage around us, actually feels like it makes us less and less able to draw and less happy with what we are drawing. What we do does come generally from how we think. But sometimes if we don't like how we're thinking and what we're doing from that thinking, we can change what we're doing to force a change in our thinking. We can take away the circumstances that have let this pattern of thinking grow and get stronger, so that there's simply nowhere for it to operate in our mind with what we're drawing or how we're drawing. And that's why I think these two tips of drawing directly with pen give ourselves no chance for erasing, but then also exercises where we draw in a very short time frame can be helpful and productive ways of doing that. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you found this interesting and possibly helpful, but whatever you're drawing and however you're drawing it, have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.